In this video, I'm going to go over the Adidas Adios Pro 3 and the Takumi Sen 9, how they work together, what Adidas was sort of intending with each shoe and how they complement one another, and then how to use them and build a basic road running rotation using just those two shoes. So if that sounds interesting, stick around and let's get started. To say Adidas was caught off guard by the Nike Vaporfly 4% and the start of the super shoe era is an understatement. Prior to the super shoe era, Adidas was the road running major player. They were dominant in both racing and training. When we're looking at what racing looked like pre-super shoes, we're talking about racing flats, and no one made better racing flats than Adidas. They had the Adios, they had the Boston 8 and 9 specifically, not necessarily a racing flat, but a great training and racing shoe. And then for their elite athletes, they had a racing flat called the Sub 2, which was built on their current hot foam technology, a Boost. Now, Boost foam was everywhere before the Vaporfly 4% and the Super Shoe era. This was the ZoomX foam pre-2017. It was everywhere, and Adidas was dominant everywhere. So they had no reason to change. Nike changed the game because Nike was, to be honest, a bit far behind back then, and they completely changed the game, and everything that's happened in the past 6 years or so has happened. But to Adidas's credit, they did adapt quicker than a lot of other brands. And not only did they adapt quicker, they came out with a better product initially. So the Adios Pro is a brand new line for Adidas. That shoe did not exist prior. In fact, they didn't really have any sort of carbon-plated super foam shoe. They tried with the Adidas Pro, but it wasn't a very good shoe. If you ran in it, you remember why. It was rough, it was brutal. Basically, it was a carbon fiber plate in light strike. Really rough to run in. So Adidas was trying, and they knew they had to catch up really quickly. And that's where the Adios Pro program or product line really started from, is the launch of the first Adios Pro. They really fast-tracked that. They really accelerated the development of that. It wasn't a typical Adidas development cycle. I remember watching some interviews with product managers, and they were talking about how they did all this work in about a year. So they went from idea to market very quickly. And the Adios Pro that we got back in 2020 was a great shoe and a great first start at a brand kind of reinventing themselves in the super shoe era from being the dominant player in the era prior. But the Adios Pro was a little rough around the edges. It didn't quite have the polish of an Adidas shoe. It was great to run in, got a lot of performance. It really stood toe-to-toe with the Vaporfly Next Percent, which was really the dominant super shoe at the time. And I think Adidas learned a lot. So Adidas comes back to market with the Adios Pro 2. Now, this was a much more polished shoe. This went through a typical Adidas development cycle, and it was refined, it was polished, it had a lot of what you'd expect from Adidas as a brand, and it was a great shoe. It was even more well-loved than the Adios Pro. It had a couple faults to it, but overall, it was a very versatile, very well-received road running shoe. But Adidas had always had this mission with the Adios Pro to be the ultimate or the best long distance racing shoe. And long distance for them meant marathon. They always wanted the Adios Pro to be the best marathon racing shoe. So with the Adios Pro 2, they made a great road racing shoe, but I think their engineers and designers felt that they had to compromise a little bit too much. And make a shoe that maybe worked for more than just the marathon. It worked for those shorter distances. So with the Adios Pro 3, they really pushed that forward. They really, leaned in heavily into making the Adios Pro 3 the best long distance or marathon road racing shoe they could. And I think they felt confident in doing that because they had the Takumi Sen 8 and now 9. Now, the Takumi Sen is not a new shoe. That's a classic racing flat line from Adidas. I have a whole video about sort of the background of what that shoe is. So if you're interested in that, there should be a card on the screen or there'll be a link in the description. Tons of detail there. But they redesigned the Takumi Sen 8 at the time to be sort of a modern racing flat. They took a lot of what they learned from the Adios Pro 2 and they put it into a somewhat lighter, more direct, more nimble package in the Takumi Sen 8. The Takumi Sen 8 and 9, there's very little difference between the two shoes. There's really only an upper difference. So I think Adidas felt very confident in really pushing the Adios Pro 3 to be the best marathon racer because they had the Takumi Sen 8 and now 9 being the best sort of road racer. So they could really look at those two shoes to really complement one another and really work together really exceptionally well. Interestingly, also, this is when the Prime X was beginning to be developed as well, in probably the early days of the Adios Pro 3 design. So where the Adios Pro 3 is the best long distance marathon racing shoe within the World Athletic racing regulations, which dictates under a 40 mil stack height. You can only have one carbon plate or carbon system in the shoe or some sort of plate system. There's a few other regulations, but those are the two primary ones. So the Adios Pro 3 plays in those rules really well. Whereas the Prime X, that's almost a hyper shoe. That can be whatever Adidas's designers want it to be. And they really push their technology to, the final degree with that one. And that I think also gave them confidence to really lean into making the Adidas Pro 3 the best marathon racer it could be within the regulations, because now they have this new platform in the Prime X that will give them a lot of data, a lot of development. They'll get a lot of feedback from runners. And I think between the Prime X and the Takumi Sen, both of those sort of filter into making the Adios Pro 3 the best shoe it can be. Let's take a look at the Adios Pro 3 specs. So what we have here in the heel is 39.5 mil of Lightstrike Pro in the heel, 33 in the forefoot with a 6.5 mil drop. There's a lot of foam in this shoe, and it feels like you're on an endless foam platform, which is a great feeling. The weight for this shoe is 8.4 ounces or 238 grams. So it isn't the lightest shoe, but I will say when you're running with this shoe, it doesn't feel heavy or bulky. It feels quite light and maybe not as nimble as a Vaporfly, but not as bulky as an Alphafly either. This shoe also has a very extreme toe spring, so the ramp from the midfoot up to the toe, which just encourages forward momentum. So the combination of that endless foam platform and that extreme toe spring just keeps your feet ticking over and over and over. Exactly what you want for the marathon distance. So if we look at that side by side with the Takumi Sen 9, we can begin to really see the differences here. In the Takumi Sen, we have 33 mil of Lightstrike Pro in the heel, 27 in the forefoot with a 6 mil drop. Not a considerable lesser amount of foam, but enough where you do notice a difference. You definitely don't get that platform feeling on here. But the bigger change with the Takumi Sen is that it's 6.6 ounces or 187 grams. It feels much lighter on foot. The Takumi Sen does have that more direct racing flat feel with a modern twist, because as you see in the Exploder view, we have all of the sort of modern Adidas technology of the rods in the forefoot and all of that Lightstrike Pro technology. So the lighter weight, the lower stack, the more direct feeling, the Takumi Sen accelerates much faster, which is exactly what you want for shorter racing and a lot of sort of shorter, harder training. So how do we build a running shoe rotation around the Adios Pro 3 specifically for marathon racing and training? Now, I did this exercise in much greater depth around Nike and just how to build a shoe rotation in general for sort of any purpose. I'll put a link in the description and a card on the screen if you want to go check that out. Again, it's around Nike, but there's a lot more detail in there about the basics of why you want to build a rotation and what to look for. So for this, I'm going to do sort of an abbreviated version for Adidas, specifically looking at marathon racing. So if the Adios Pro 3 is sort of our core marathon racing and training shoe, for all of our marathon racing, our long runs, our fast tempo, our fartleks, all of that work you'd be doing in the marathon training block, we would complement that with the Takumi Sen 9. So this now is all of the other racing, so half marathons and under, 5, 10K racing, But more importantly, all of that sort of faster, harder interval training and threshold efforts, that's where the Takumi Sen 9 is really going to complement the Adios Pro 3 for a marathoner, because it's going to be that lighter, more direct sort of racing flat that's going to just help you build that speed. So when you're in the Adios Pro 3 on the longer marathon focused stuff, you're just going to be able to like really benefit from all that work. And really the only other shoe you need in here would be a daily trainer, which for Adidas is currently the SL. And with these three shoes, you've got everything covered. You got from your daily runs to your hard, fast efforts and shorter racing to all of your marathon training and racing. This is your core Adidas rotation. You literally don't need anything else than these three shoes. You can do everything with these three shoes. But Adidas does make a bunch of other shoes. So where do they fit within this matrix for a marathoner? First one to talk about would be the Boston 11. This is Adidas's dedicated tempo trainer. So all of those long runs, fast tempo, and fartlek work that you would do, or you can do very well in the Adios Pro 3, if you want another shoe that's maybe a little bit more durable, a little bit more user-friendly, that's not a race shoe, that's really what the Boston 11 is meant for. Personally, I prefer to do all that work in the Adios Pro anyway. I typically like my longer tempo training to be done in a race shoe anyway, but that's just me. On the shorter side, you have the Adios series, specifically right now the Adios 7. This is really Adidas's classic racing flat. There's no rods in this. There's just foam. There is a midfoot torsion plate that controls the flex of the shoe, but this is really your classic racing flat to do all of your speed work in, to get the training effect of building foot strength, because again, there's no rods in this. It's just the classic racing flat that really complements everything else here. The other thing about the Adios series is that they're very durable. And if you're the type of runner who prefers a more direct, maybe lighter weight daily trainer, the Adios is definitely a great option to replace the SL if that's what you want. For a marathoner, this is where the Primex Strong would come in. Again, this is the hyper shoe. It's not a race legal shoe, but again, for us normal runners, none of that really matters because we're not going for podiums and world majors. So if you like the Primex Strong, which is a very polarizing shoe, and you want to use that for your longer training or even racing, marathon racing, by all means, they sort of complement each other in that way. And I think that's how Adidas really designed them to work together. And then lastly, you would have your max cushion or cushion trainer. And for Adidas, currently that's the Ultra Boost Light, though to be honest, I think if you're an Adidas athlete, you typically like a firmer shoe and a more direct ride. And you're probably not one who spends a lot of time in a max cushion shoe anyway, but if you want to, Adidas has you covered with the Ultra Boost Light. Now, everything outside of those core three shoes, they're all specialists. They're all nice to haves. You don't need them, but they definitely help extend the life of the core shoes and maybe really specialize in one or two things when you're getting into those sort of workouts. Now, this video is being recorded in May 2023. Within the next month or two, a bunch of shoes on this chart will be updated. Mostly the Adios 7 becomes the Adios 8. That shoe looks great. It actually looks like it's probably the better daily trainer of either one of these. The Boston 11 becomes the 12. Some minor refreshes there. We should see an Adios Pro 4 and maybe one or two other surprises from Adidas. So this will change, but the fundamentals of how to build this rotation for a marathon will stay the same. So there you go. That's how the Adios Pro 3 and the Takumi Sen work together. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you run in these shoes? Do you use these shoes? I always love those comments. I always love hearing that. If you found this video useful, subscribe. You'll see many more videos on this channel like this. And then share this with your friends who may be interested or have questions about these shoes. And as always, drop a like on this. Helps this channel keep growing, which is great. And with that, I will see you